Space is rarely silent when you fall, it screams. For Lieutenant Darren Kell, the scream was the metallic shriek of an escape pod tearing through the atmosphere of Teroth. Moments ago, he was a security officer aboard the Northern Storm, charting the peaceful Outer Rim. Now, after a merciless meteor swarm, he was a meteor himself, wreathed in fire, hurtling toward a bruised and copper-colored world. The crash was a seismic event, a bone-rattling collision of Alliance steel against unforgiving stone that carved a scar into the planet's crust. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the hiss of dying systems. He emerged into a furnace. Twin suns beat down on a landscape of jagged rock and endless dust, a place where survival is not a right, but a violent negotiation. We often talk about the hostility of alien worlds, but we rarely understand that isolation is the deadliest predator of all. For 3 days, Kell walked the razor's edge of dehydration, haunted by the feeling of eyes on his back. Salvation appeared as a shimmering oasis, but it carried a price. As he knelt to drink, instinct, honed by years of military discipline, screamed. His hands snapped up, snatching a silver-shafted arrow inches from his jugular. "Impossible!" hissed a voice from the rocks. She emerged like a storm embodied in flesh. Teros. Her skin was deep azure, her hair a braided crimson flame, and her golden eyes burned with a hatred that felt personal. She was of the Blazing Blades clan, and she hadn't missed. Kell had simply done the impossible. Suddenly, the sands erupted with camouflaged warriors. Elder Ravina, a woman of weathered blue skin and iron authority, stepped forward. By their ancient laws, catching a lethal arrow wasn't just a feat of reflexes, it was a marriage contract. Their souls were bound. Terrace recoiled, the color draining from her face. To her, Kell was a monster, a skyman like those who had traded poison medicine to her brother Macon, killing him and the children he tried to heal. Her grief had hardened into a weapon, and now she was shackled to the very thing she loathed. The compromise was brutal, a mirror of the world itself. 3 trials. If Kell survived, he earned his place and the marriage stood. If he failed, Terrace would be free of her shame, and Kell would be dead. The first trial was a descent into blinding chaos. In a canyon whipped by a sandstorm, they hunted the ghost lizard, a 6-legged nightmare with phosphorescent scales. Visibility was 0, the air electric with dust. Terrace, usually lethal, hesitated, her arrow going wide in the confusion. The beast charged her. Kell didn't think, he acted. Drawing the primitive bow, he tracked the creature not by sight, but by the logic of combat. One shot, piercing the eye. He had saved the woman who wanted him dead. There is a peculiar intimacy in saving an enemy. It complicates the simplicity of hatred. Next came the fire, a volcanic caldera, a lake of glass and lava, where colossal shadow worms swam through molten rock. The task: cross the fragile obsidian bridges and retrieve a sacred torch. Terrace danced across the spans with acrobatic grace, fighting with fury. Kell, lacking her agility, used his mind. Realizing the worms hunted by vibration, he created a sonic distraction, tapping a rhythm on the glass to draw the swarm away. While Terrace fought for her life, Kell secured the torch. He waited for her, pulling her back from the brink of a lava-drenched death. "Survival isn't about impressing the enemy," he told her, handing over the torch. "It's about breathing when the dust settles." The final trial was the Maw, a deep, tranquil lake hiding the Ancient One, a leviathan of the depths. The task was to summon it with blood and steal a tooth. As their blood mingled in the water, the surface exploded. The Ancient One rose, a god of scales and teeth, devouring a massive juvenile ripper in a single bite. In the churning chaos, Kell dove, spearing a loose tooth with a crystalline lance. But as he surfaced, he saw Terrace cornered by another juvenile. He had his victory in hand. He could have left her. Instead, he dropped the trophy and drove his broken spear into her attacker's eye. They stood together in the shallows, chest to chest, adrenaline binding them tighter than any law. "Why, mate?" she demanded, her world fracturing. "Because that's who I am," Kell replied. And for the first time, the gold in her eyes wasn't burning with hate, but melting with confusion. She challenged him one last time, not a trial, but a duel in the sand circle. No weapons, just flesh and bone. It was a violent dance, a physical conversation where respect replaced animosity. They fought until exhaustion claimed them, Kel pinning her but refusing to strike the final blow. He yielded the physical fight, but won the war. "I choose you," Terrace announced to the stunned clan, "not because an arrow decreed it, but because you are worthy." 5 years is a lifetime when you are building a world. Kel became a part of the Blazing Blades, blending Alliance medical knowledge with traditional remedies to heal the clan, redeeming the tragedy of Macon. He and Terry Aharas had 2 children, bridges between the stars and the sand. But the past is a ghost that never truly vanishes. An Alliance tactical frigate descended, shattering their peace. Commander Vex, an intelligence officer with ice in his veins, marched out with armed troops. He demanded Kel's extraction, viewing the lieutenant as a compromised asset holding classified data. Kel stood between the soldiers and his family. "I'm not returning, Commander." Vex sneered, ready to take him by force until the dunes shifted. Dozens of Blazing Blades warriors materialized, arrows notched. Ravina stood on the ridge, threatening to burn the ship's fuel lines, while holding a pouch of toxic dust that could petrify the soldiers' lungs. It was a standoff between technology and terrain. Kel offered a trade, a data crystal containing 5 years of planetary research, biological, geological, cultural, in exchange for his freedom. "Tell them I died a hero," Kel said, tossing the crystal. "The paperwork is easier." Vex weighed the cost of a battle he couldn't win against a treasure trove of intelligence. He took the deal. As the frigate ascended, leaving the atmosphere, the record showed Lieutenant Kel perished in the crash. On the ground, the man who was once a soldier of the stars wrapped his arm around his wife. He watched the ship disappear into the copper sky, surrounded by a clan that was no longer alien, but kin. In stories like this, we often search for the escape, the return to the familiar. But sometimes the crash isn't an accident, it's an arrival. Kel hadn't been stranded on Taroth, he had been found.